Welcome back to Touring History, the podcast where we take a leisurely stroll through the past and somehow always end up running for our lives from the sheer chaos of human existence. I'm Lane.
And I'm lost. I'm Dave, your co-pilot with a blindfold on this journey through time, armed with nothing but Wikipedia and the vague hope that we'll sound smarter than we actually are. Not too hard.
Before we dive into today's historical carnival of absurdity, we want to thank our sponsor, Death Wish Coffee.
Ooh.
Now, Dave, I know you've been testing their product extensively.
Oh, yes, I've had 6 cups already. Oh, extensively is putting it mildly, Lane. I've been drinking Death Wish coffee for the past week, and I can now see through time. That's right, there's a wormhole in front of me. Oh, make it stop. Not metaphorically, literally. I watched the Battle of Hastings from my kitchen this morning, 1066 it was. Death Wish coffee uses a blend of naturally high-caffeine robusta beans with smooth arabica beans sourced from fair trade certified farms. And apparently it also grants you temporal omniscience.
Founded in 2012 in Saratoga Springs, New York, Death Wish Coffee became the smallest company to run a Super Bowl commercial after winning a competition, which proves that with enough caffeine, even small businesses can achieve the impossible, or at least afford 30 seconds of American attention span.
That's right. No costume malfunction there, folks. Visit deathwishcoffee.com to fuel your own journey through space and time. Ooh. And now let's see what June 4th has brought us through history, starting with people who decided to be born on this day, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, today we celebrate the birthday of Angelina Jolie, born in 1975, proving that some people are just genetically programmed to make the rest of us feel inadequate in every conceivable way.
Oh, now stop it, Lane. Also born today in 1975, because apparently that was a banner year for people who would later make us question our life choices, Russell Brand. Yes, a man who somehow made a career out of being aggressively British. I'm talking very, very fast.
Yes, that brand has some brand issues.
Oh, dig it. Wait a minute. That deserves another sip of Death Wish coffee.
We've got Bar Raffaele, born 1985. George III from 1738, the king who lost America because he
Oops.
couldn't figure out taxation without representation was a bad slogan. And Bruce Dern from 1936, who's been playing unsettling characters in movies since before your parents figured out how movies worked.
Yes, well, speaking of things that predate our understanding, let's travel back to the very beginning of our historical tour.
Oh, should we go all the way back to 1738?
Yes, King George is born that day, June 4th, marks the birth of that terrible king, a man whose legacy can be summed up as how to lose an empire in 10 easy steps. Step 1. Go take a nap. George would go on to rule Britain for 60 years, which is impressive until you realize he spent a good chunk of that time talking to trees. Oh, okay, I love you. You need a hug.
The man had what historians politely call episodes of mental illness, though I suspect if you were responsible for losing the American colonies, you'd probably start having conversations with the furniture too. Hello, Ottoman. Do you think I should have taxed tea? Well, Your Majesty, I wouldn't know. I'm a footrest.
Yes, that's a good way to blame things on furniture. You lost the country. Well, it's all about the furniture. Shall I go on? But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Young George was just a baby on this day. In fact, he was just a baby that day and never before that day, blissfully unaware that he would one day become the poster child for why absolute monarchy might not be the best system of government. I wonder if they even had posters back then. Oh, yes. The guy who stood out in the square and yelled, "Hear ye, hear ye!" He had one of those unscrolled posters.
That's right, the town crier.
That's right.
Fast forwarding to 1896, Henry Ford took his first automobile, the quadricycle, for a test drive. Now, calling it the quadricycle makes it sound like a fancy bicycle for people who really, really can't balance, but this was actually the beginning of Ford's journey towards revolutionizing transportation.
Yes, the Ocho cycle just didn't work. Too many wheels. The quadricycle was essentially 4 bicycle wheels attached to a buggy with an engine that produced a, get this, whopping 4 horsepower. I bet those 4 horses next to him were like looking at him going, oh, brother, that's never going to work. For perspective, that's less power than most modern coffee grinders. Ho ho! You know where I'm going with this one, Lane. Speaking of which, Death Wish Coffee probably has more kick than Ford's first car had horsepower.
That is probably true.
Mm-hmm.
Ford would later say he knew he was onto something when his test drive didn't end up with him being trampled by a horse, which was apparently the bar for automotive success in 1896. Low expectations. They're not just for dating anymore.
That's right.
But this topic is one that makes me think of if I could go back in history and mess with somebody.
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun to go back and talk to Henry Ford on his test drive about the quadricycle
Right.
and say, I'm from the future.
That's
And
right.
all I want to tell you is there are more 18 wheel vehicles on the road than any other type of vehicle. Have him go down the path of like 18 wheels. Why do we have to have 18? But it must be important for the future.
Tell me, Lane, do those have brakes? Because this thing doesn't. Our first,
Anyway,
yes, getting
tangent.
on to 1917, our first advertising history moment comes from 1917, when the American Association of Advertising Agencies, the 4As, was founded because apparently America looked at World War I raging across Europe and thought, hey, you know what we really need right now? Better advertising.
Right. This organization would go on to establish standards for advertising ethics. Are there
Ah!
any? Which is like establishing standards of unicorn behavior.
That's right.
Theoretically important, but you're not entirely sure that thing you're regulating actually exists.
That's right. What's that saying? Better to ask for permission than beg for forgiveness, or something like that. The 4As is as it's known because Americans love acronyms almost as much as we love advertising. Would eventually oversee the industry that convinced us we needed everything from cigarettes for our health to cars that would make us attractive. Revolutionary stuff, Lane.
Moving on to 1919, Dave, Congress passed the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote. Only took us about 143 years after independence to realize that maybe, just maybe, half the population should have a say in how the country is run.
That's right. The amendment passed the House by a margin of 304 to 89. I wonder what those 89 guys went home to. Which seems decisive until you realize that 89 congressmen looked at the idea of women voting and thought, nope, that's too radical, Billy. I assume these are the same men who thought the earth was flat and that bathing was dangerous. No, don't do it. No, you need to stink more.
What's remarkable is that this was considered controversial. Women had been proving their competence in literally every other area of life, but somehow the idea of them choosing politicians was seen as a bridge too far, because clearly men had been doing such a stellar job with that responsibility.
That's right. Hey, why don't you try giving birth for once? Our second advertising history moment, 1937, saw the introduction of the first shopping cart. Well, scenes of Animal House, right? At the Humpty Dumpty supermarket in Oklahoma City, because nothing says American innovation like figuring out how to carry more stuff we don't need. I'll take that and that
Yeah,
and that and that.
the cart was invented by Sylvan Goldman,
What a
who
great name.
noticed that customers, I know, silver and gold in one word,
Yes.
Sylvan Goldman, one name. He noticed that customers stopped shopping when their handheld baskets got too heavy. So his
What?
solution was wheels.
Wheels.
Revolutionary thinking. When people can't carry more, give them something with wheels to carry more. Back to the 18 wheeler.
And Henry
This
Ford.
That's right. This is either genius or the beginning of the end of civilization.
Why, I'm going to throw wheels on everything in my house. Forget it. You know, Goldman had to hire attractive people. Lane, were you hired by him? To push
No,
the
it was
carts
before my time.
around the store because customers were initially too embarrassed to use them. Come on. Which
That's
means we literally.
hilarious.
Jeez. Oh, no, I'm not going to touch it. No, no, no. Nah, get it away from me. Which means we literally had to be tricked into accepting the tool that would eventually enable our transformation into a nation of bulk shoppers. Yeah, just throw a model behind a cart. All right, I'm using that thing.
How far we've come. They didn't want to look gluttonous by pushing around a cart with wheels, right? They
Right,
were
right.
embarrassed they were going to get so much stuff.
Yeah,
And now they can't even put the carts back. And there's entire social channels like Cart Narcs that
yeah.
walk around filming videos of people too consumed with themselves to take 3 steps and put the cart back where it
That's right.
belongs.
Ah, too
So,
busy to put the cart back, huh?
yeah, yeah. All right, we'll be right back with more historical chaos. But first, let's take a moment to thank our sponsor again, shall
Oh,
we, Dave?
yes, I'd love to, Lane. Death Wish Coffee has been harnessing the magical powers of robusta beans since 2012, before other companies caught on. Ha ha! They created coffee so strong that NASA literally sent it to the International Space Station. Because, hey, when you're orbiting Earth at 17,500 miles per hour, ho ho, you need coffee that can keep up with you. Johnny Vapor Trail.
Their, their USDA organic and fair trade certified beans are sourced from India, Peru, and Central America, then roasted to what they call deep, never bitter perfection. It's coffee that respects both your taste buds and your need to remain conscious for more than 4 hours at a time.
Hey man, they respect all your buds, not just your taste buds. Because Death Wish Coffee, and use our code, just kidding, we don't have a code, but visit anyway because they make excellent coffee. And we're not just saying that because they're paying us, because, well, they aren't. We're saying it because they're paying us, but we'd say it anyway. No, they're not paying us anyway. They will.
And now back to our historical journey.
That's right.
Let's go to June 4th, 1940, which marked the end of the Dunkirk evacuation and Winston Churchill's famous "We shall fight on the beaches" speech. Operation Dynamo had just rescued over 338,000 Allied troops from what should have been a complete disaster on the beach.
Yeah, that sure was the case because the German generals wouldn't wake up Hitler, who was taking a nap. Yep, that's it, folks. Nope, 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 nope. Don't wake the Fuhrer up. No. Churchill stood before Parliament and essentially said, well, we just had our asses handed to us, but don't worry. We're going to keep fighting anyway. This is the British approach to everything. Lose spectacularly, American Revolution, then give a rousing speech about it.
This speech included the immortal lines about fighting on the beaches, on the landing grounds, in the fields, and in the streets. Basically, Churchill's plan was to fight the Germans everywhere except, apparently, in the places where they'd actually want to go. It's like declaring you'll defend your house by fighting in the yard, the garage, and the shed, but maybe not so much in the actual living room.
We shall fight in the sewers, on a Ferris wheel. We shall fight in your underpants. 2 years later, June 4th, 1942, the Battle of Midway began in the Pacifics. Not the Pacifics, the Pacific. This would become the turning point of the Pacific theater, proving that sometimes the best military strategy is to, well, accidentally stumble into the right place, accidentally stumble into exactly the right place at the exact right time.
The Americans had broken Japanese naval codes, which meant they knew the attack was coming. This is like playing poker when you can see the other guy's cards, except the stakes were the entire Pacific Ocean and also civilization as we know it.
Great analogy. Poker to world domination. The battle would last 4 days and result in Japan losing four, not five, four aircraft carriers and their best pilots. It's worth noting that this massive victory happened partly because of intelligence work. Wouldn't know anything about that. And partly because sometimes luck decides to show up wearing an American flag. Well, that's always been my thing. I'm wearing one right now. Nothing else.
Your lucky American flag underwear.
That's right. Where is he?
And
Where's
if you're
that?
watching on YouTube, you can see Dave in his lucky American underwear.
That's right. In London, in a sewer.
Moving ahead to 1944, the U.S. Army captured Rome, making it the first Axis capital to fall to the Allies. Though calling Rome an Axis capital is a bit like calling your rebellious teenager the head of household rebellion. Technically accurate, but everyone knows who's really in charge.
Yes, the capture of Rome was overshadowed by D-Day happening, well, 2 days later, which proves that even in World War II, timing is everything. Yeah, it's like throwing the party of the century the same weekend as someone else's wedding. Sure, your event is important, but good luck getting coverage.
Still, liberating Rome was significant. The city had been continuously inhabited for over 2,500 years, had survived the fall of the Roman Empire, the rise of the Catholic Church, and countless invasions, but apparently couldn't handle Mussolini, which tells you something about Mussolini.
Yeah. Hey, you know what was really exciting on this day?
Ooh, dun
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 dun.
dun 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 dun.
Take a guess,
Ooh!
listeners! The premiere of Jaws, which created the summer blockbuster and ruined beach vacations forever. Steven Spielberg took a mechanical shark that barely worked and somehow convinced an entire generation that the ocean was trying to kill them.
The movie was supposed to show the shark constantly, but the mechanical shark kept breaking down, so Spielberg had to use suggestion and music instead. The accidental artistic choice created more terror than any CGI shark could manage today. It's like the shark was so scary it broke itself.
Yeah, Jaws made people afraid to go swimming in swimming pools. Now, Jimmy, don't slather that chum on you anymore. That's a swimming hole, which shows you the power of cinema. The movie was about a great white shark in the ocean, but audiences applied the fear universally. I couldn't even take a shower after that. I still haven't, as a matter of fact. What if there's a shark in my bathtub, they wondered, as if sharks had learned to use plumbing.
Ah, good times, good memories. Another good memory. 1984 brought us Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA, an album that would be misunderstood by more politicians than probably any other piece of music in American history. The title track is actually a critique of how America treated Vietnam veterans, but it has a catchy chorus, so politicians used it at rallies anyway.
There's the irony, right? This is peak America, taking a song that's critical of how we treat our veterans and using it to celebrate America at political events. Yeah, I guess it's like using War Pigs as your wedding song. Sure, it rocks, but you might want to listen to the lyrics first. Hey, turn it up! I can't hear it in the back pew.
War Pigs,
War
the wedding
Pigs.
song. Springsteen himself has had to ask multiple politicians to stop using his music, which must be frustrating. Imagine writing a song about the struggles of working class America and then having wealthy politicians use it to soundtrack their campaigns. That's not irony, that's just American politics.
Hey, Vladimir, why are you using my song? You're not even in America. Come on. June 4th, 1989 was a study in contrasts. In Beijing, the Chinese government violently suppressed pro-democracy protesters in Tiananmen Square, while in Poland, the country held its first partially free election since World War II. Wonder what that meant. Well, you can only vote halfway, okay? I
Yeah,
want 1 foot out of that curtain, okay?
only half the polling stations were open and you didn't know which ones.
That's right. You had
Um,
to guess. Quick, run down
if
the
you
block. There it is.
you can find one and get your vote in before the time runs out, you get to vote.
That's right, but it's actually a mirage.
Back to Tiananmen Square. The image of a single protester standing in front of a column of tanks in Tiananmen Square became one of the most powerful photographs in history. One person standing alone, facing down the machinery of authoritarian power. Meanwhile, in Poland, people were lining up to vote in elections that would begin the end of communist rule in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, it's remarkable how the same day could showcase both the brutal suppression of democracy and its peaceful emergence. Oh, how about that? History doesn't follow a script. Sometimes it's writing tragedy and comedy simultaneously, and you never know which one you're living through until later.
Finally, we end with 1996 and the spectacular failure of the Ariane 5 rocket during its maiden flight. After 37 seconds of flight, the rocket exploded, taking with it 4 satellites and approximately $500 million.
What they didn't tell you, there were 4 other Ariane rockets that did the same damn thing. The cause? A software error. Specifically, a piece of code from the previous Ariane 4 rocket that couldn't handle the Ariane 5's faster acceleration, or 3, or 2, or 1. So Europe's most advanced rocket was destroyed by what was essentially a copy and paste error. Whoops. This is why you always test your code, kids, right?
Right. The explosion was later called the most expensive software bug in history, though I suspect that record has since been broken by whatever code runs social media algorithms.
Hmm.
At least the Ariane 5 explosion was quick. Social media bugs just slowly destroy civilization over decades.
Oh, and that's our tour through June 4th. Throughout history, from King George III's birth to rocket explosions with stops for women's suffrage, shopping carts, and sharks that terrorized a generation.
Once again, thanks to Death Wish Coffee for sponsoring today's episode. Visit deathwishcoffee.com for coffee strong enough to fuel your own journey through the absurdity of human existence.
Yes, I'll have another. Join us next time when we'll explore another day in history and try to make sense of how we got there to here without completely losing our minds.
I'm
And
Lane.
I'm Dave, and this
And this has been
During
history.
history.
See you tomorrow, kids.
Bye bye.